Good afternoon, everyone. We're excited to join you here behind the scenes to talk about some issues that are important to you. Greg, it's always good to see you.
Lord, it's good to see you.
We're taking a little extra time to kind of bring you at home in on some of our behind the scenes discussions because we have found on our segments that we do every Wednesday at 5:30. There's a lot more that we end up talking about when we're off camera. And so now we want to bring you all in on that. And probably starting next week, we'll give you a chance earlier in the day to send us your questions on any of the topics we decide to talk about. So today, it's kind of a broad view, if you will, on a grand jury. You know, recently, Greg, all the time, but especially recently, we've been talking about big cases in the news, and I end the story, or Bo ends the story by saying, all right, this now is on its way to the grand jury. What does that mean?
Wow, the grand jury is secret. It is 13 citizens in the state of Tennessee that meet, and they decide if there's probable cause an offense was committed. And when I say secret, under Rule 6 of the Tennessee Rules of Criminal Procedure, it is a crime to disclose what is going on and what has gone on in a grand jury.
You can get in a lot of trouble
You-
over
you
that.
can
That's why
get-
we never hear about it.
We do, and let's talk about how Tennessee law is set up. Typically, if someone swears out a warrant, you're in sessions court where the state must prove probable cause. It's kind of a 50-50 standard, and if they tip those scales of justice 1%, the case goes to the grand jury.
Okay.
So I can't go, you can't go, the media, the royal
Right.
you, the client can't go. So what you have is another screening system to again find probable cause. If they issue a true bill, the case comes out in criminal court and it starts all over again.
If they issue a no bill, because we've reported on that, what does that mean?
Well, a no true bill means that the grand jury has said no. You have
So
to
it's
have
done.
It's done,
Yeah.
and you have to have 12 grand jurors unanimously out of 12 out of the 13 to vote either for a true bill, for a non or a not true bill. But Lori, the old adage, can a prosecutor indict a ham sandwich?
I was going to ask you that. How did you know?
Jeff, who is standing on,
Jeff,
on,
wave to
just out of
everybody.
you,
Say hello.
That was his.
That's the hand of our
That was his
executive
take.
producer.
And absolutely, prosecutors can, because here's the statistics. In the state of Tennessee, only 2% of all cases are no true bill.
2%?
2%. 98% are given true bills and go on to criminal court.
They go on.
In
All right.
Chattanooga recently, they're even more stingy with true bills. 1% in a recent study.
So grand juries are a very important part of the legal system, obviously. Okay, let's talk about some of the cases that you all have asked us about and you've weighed in on. The federal indictments against former President Trump. Let's talk about how a grand jury weighs in on that.
Right, and so basically there are two ways to use a grand jury. One, it's kind of an intermediate step between sessions court, a smaller court.
Right.
Every state except Connecticut has a grand jury, and criminal court, a court of record. But prosecutors, when they're doing an investigation, when they are dealing with a complex case, they impanel a grand jury to try to convince them of their theories, their evidence. And so that's what we've seen in these mega cases.
Yeah.
Trump, Hunter Biden, grand juries. And if you notice, they're everybody guesses. Here's what we think's happening when the indictment's going to return. But no one ever knows except that grand jury.
And that grand jury, when you were talking about the fact that it's against the law to ever discuss any of that, that's before, during, and after.
Well, it depends.
Right?
Sometimes if you get judicial leave to try to get some statements, sometimes statements are given in criminal procedure issues. It's called jinx material.
Oh,
Now,
interesting.
like all things California is different.
What are you
When
saying?
there's an indictment returned, then the grand jury report is public. But what we're seeing, and I've seen it happen, is prosecutors like to release a grand jury report. Because, Lori, let me tell you, if I'm a smart prosecutor, not only is it required by our Constitution, and it's a mandatory screening process, but it gives me, John Q. prosecutor, cover. Because I'm saying, hey, I took this case to the grand jury. This is what our community thinks after hearing all the proof. But what people don't know, that's interesting because obviously there was a prosecutor that was disagreeing with what I said.
I think so.
As they called one of our cell phones, this is what our community thinks after hearing all the proof. But what people
you're the prosecutor
on the case,
Yeah.
or you can vigorously pursue it,
Or play music as
Or
a
play
distraction.
music.
You know, and as
But
a
this is perfect. When we said behind the scenes, this
is
behind the
live
scenes.
on WATE.com. We're going to do this once a week, delving into the issues that you're interested in. And we thought we would start out with this one because it is such a wide overview of an important part, like we said, of the legal process. And this does bring to mind a case that I still see orange ribbons all around town for this young man, Ben Credich, who was killed. He was a pedestrian. He was a well-loved young man. And this is a high-profile case. A guy who was accused of DUI, accused of hitting him and killing him. And the grand jury has figured in on this case as well.
Lori, that is a just senseless, tragic case where you have an impaired driver going across lanes of traffic on Kingston Pike and hitting this young man. But the community outpouring has just been touching.
It continues.
When you see the orange ribbons up and down Sequoia Hills everywhere.
Yeah.
But in that case, there was a preliminary hearing, charges of DUI, paraphernalia charges, vehicular homicide by impairment, and now they are being considered by the grand jury. So, you know, grand juries are very important, and, you know, what they want to do is make sure they get it right. So, you know, that case invariably will come out of criminal court. Now,
A lot of factors in that case.
a lot of factors. Now, a recent case in Morgan County, you had an 8-year-old that got in a chair, climbed on top of the family refrigerator, shot himself with a gun. So what's the DA and the sheriff decide to do? Well, do we charge the parents? Was it their fault? No, we're going to take it to the grand jury.
The grand jury.
And
the grand jury came back with
a no true bill.
interesting.
So their stats are screwed up here midway through the year. The 2% of no true bills has increased in Morgan County.
What did you think about that?
You know, interesting. I think unless you had a strong case that the parents were negligent in terms of breaching a standard of care that rose to criminality.
Because they did have the firearm up high.
Reckless endangerment, etc. Then I think it was a wise decision to listen to the community standards. And the community said, no, this was an 8-year-old. The gun was out of reach, apparently, and shot himself. So another interesting way to see how grand juries can work in a positive manner for a no true bill. So cleared the parents, taught the kid a valuable lesson, don't play with guns.
Could have been a lot worse.
Could have been a lot
Could have been a lot worse. Okay, I have to ask you this. So we were talking about prosecutors trying ham sandwiches. Let's look at the defense attorney side of things, obviously. How does your side of things, if you will, when you're in the courtroom, how do you view the grand jury? What do you hope to get out of that?
Well, you know, every now and then we get a surprise. We get a no true bill, which is great. But often we represent clients outside the grand jury, and we give them a piece of paper that says, when you're asked this question, say, I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And you kind of peek through the door of the grand jury, and you tell your client to repeat that if they are subpoenaed to a grand jury. But what do we think? It's very important. But once a case enters the grand jury, be prepared because it's coming out the other side in criminal court.
All right. Greg, thank you.
Well,
I look
thank
forward
you.
to doing this once a week with you. And don't forget, join us at 5:30 every Wednesday because we're going to follow up on this.
And
really have
next
some good
week we're going
stuff.
to silence our cell phones.
Well, somebody is.
Somebody
is that
is,
our
not
EP's
us.
phone? I don't know. His name is Jeff. Thanks for being with us.